we can just say they're not our leaders by just because we don't personally like them. But that's not how you unseat or dethrone a leader. So yeah, we got a lot of issues with leadership dating back to plantation era up till now. And I don't think we give it enough attention or authority. And then we think we can go, well, my leader is this, or I'm my own leader, which is another really silly thing we get up to, where we need some political and collective maturity on the concept of leadership all around, because you're not your own leader either. That's not how it works. In the context of politics, collective work, and development, in that context, as far as what you're going to do in your personal life, I'm not, because don't get on here and say, I'm telling you you're not, but in the context of this discussion.
All right.
Can I ask a question, Larry? Sorry.
Yeah, hurry up. You got 55 seconds.
Yeah, hi, this is Simonetta. So on the topic of leadership, I just want some clarifications. What examples of Black leadership have there been where, you know, Black people have been solely part of the process? Would Umar Johnson be, I mean, like, who, and then you talk about funding, like, who are the people who are footing the bill? Aren't there other Black people who are also helping to fund his activities and his advocacies?
Umar is a demagogue. He's not really a leader. He's more of a factionalist. He has very limited reach. As far as leaders, if you go back to Booker T, he was literally funded by the DuPonts, the Rockefellers, all of that old New England money. You know, he was funded by that. W.B. Du Bois had institutional legitimacy, where because he came out of Harvard and other hallowed areas of Western academia, that's where, so our leaders get validation and legitimacy from different places. There have been what is called organic leaders, which leaders who grew up from the grassroots, from our community. Malcolm X was not a hand-selected leader. He grew up organically. He got derailed up in that silly cult for a while, but he was an organic leader, as well as Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who was also an organic leader. Robert F. Williams was an organic leader that grew up from. So we do have many good examples of leaders who were not handpicked and superimposed on our communities. But we also have organic leaders like Dr. King, because they were so charismatic that couldn't be subverted, so they were co-opted. So sometimes we grow up our own leaders and they get co-opted. Other times we grow up our leaders are put on are superimposed on us, but they have some type of development or transformation, and they come back to us. It's a dynamic thing. The concept of leader is never stagnant. Leaders are human, so they change as they grow. They change as their circumstances grow. That's why I oppose the concept of leader for life. If you're part of an organization, anything formally organized, that the leader's been in position for 20 years or more, leave that damn thing, because leadership for life is a plague. I don't care if you're dealing with a Caribbean nation, an African nation, or a Black community here in the States. That leader for life is evident of, and the organization I was part of, the leader was a leader for 30 years. And when I spoke up, they squazzed me out of. It's like, you know, I was kind of like, it's him or me. And of course it was him, because he was well established. And so we got a lot of issues when it comes to leadership.
All right, so we obviously can get back to that part, especially because the conversation is rooted in what we appear as leaderships, and sometimes celebrities are who were given to us as leaders. So who want to go second?
Celebrities are not leaders. Celebrities are salesmen. That's the only reason celebrities exist, is to sell lifestyle products, images, and ideas. There is no such thing as a celebrity leader.
I would agree, but what I was saying
they are brand ambassadors and lifestyle ambassadors, which is a different thing than political or social or cultural leadership.
Yeah, what I was saying was not that they are leaders. I'm saying they are forced on our community as if they are leaders. I'm not saying that they are leaders. Okay. Who's second? Don't be shy.
Can I ask a question about the celebrity? Ask them a question about celebrity and leader.
So for the people just coming in, let me show you how and tell you how it's going. Everybody has up to 3 minutes to answer a question, right? After those 3 minutes, we have up to 6 minutes to ask clarifying questions. After the 7 minutes, up to 10 minutes, that person is closed until they either ask a clarifying question or we get to the latter part. So,
got it.
So at this point, the next person who's answering the question, is their goal. So who want to
Oh,
be next?
sorry.
Miss Jones is going to go and tell us the question that you're answering. Then when you start, we'll start the time.
Okay, I'm answering question 15. How should Black people organize and respond to the current climate of the U.S. and ultimately the world? Kind of, I think, goes along with the Diallo. So I don't know. Most of you probably don't know me. I am licensed as a marriage and family therapist and addiction counselor. I do a lot of work with mental health, youth and families and communities. And so I would say the first thing that we need to do.
Hold on 1 second. Let me let you start over. So if you're not talking, please mute your phone so we don't get double feedback, coughing, and background noise. So mute your device while you're not talking. Everybody. All right. So I'm sorry, and you can start over.
Okay. Yeah, so I've been in this working with mental health for over 20 years, and I would say the first thing to do, I'm answering question 15, is to heal. We need to heal individually and collectively. And so with that, I mean, we need to heal our minds and everything that we've experienced as individuals and within our families. You know, I work with a lot of youth and they are killing themselves, Black youth, they're killing themselves because they don't feel like they're worthy. They don't feel like they are enough for whatever reasons. And so if we are not like healing, then we can't do anything collectively. So I think that's my main point, is that we really need to heal and focus on addressing like the pain that we've experienced as a community, individually, growing up in households where there was abuse, growing up in households where we weren't taught how to manage our emotions. We weren't taught to understand that our thoughts can just be our thoughts. They don't have to rule us. We weren't taught how to take care of our bodies. And so we're putting anything in our bodies. And so if we're not healthy, we can't be here to fight for anything. So there's just so much, I would say, when I'm saying healing, I'm talking about mentally, physically, spiritually, economically as well. I think Diallo said it, like, you know, we would probably chase $1 more than we would chase, you know, eating something healthy. So I think that's important. Healing is a lot to that, but mainly taking care of our mental health, because there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, and just people don't know how to deal with it. And so working with children and working with adults in unhealthy relationships. And so if you got all that going on, my observations, if people have all that going on, they cannot organize to do anything else because they have so much going on in their own personal lives, and they're not addressing it, you know, not believing that people get depressed, not believing that we're struggling or suffering from PTSD because of all the trauma that we've experienced as a community or individually. So that's my response, is really working on healing and reaching out to other people, finding people who you can trust to help build you up. Like, I would say going beyond this earthly worth that we have or that we believe we're supposed to be, going even beyond that and recognizing that you're more than just, you know, what people tell you you're supposed to be. So it's a lot to that, but that's my statement.
All right, you got 35 seconds. You want to cancel that time, or you want to finish with a point?
I think I'm done.
Okay. All right. Who got the first clarifying question? I have an immediate one if nobody has one.
She did.
Ivan Diallo, and then I'll go.
So I read a study online that said 60% of Black children that grow up in the inner city have PTSD. What's your personal experience with dealing with that group, and would you say that study is accurate?
I say it's probably more than that. Like, trauma can be anything, and so with social media now, where everybody's posting a lot of the, you know, victimization of people online, and children are seeing that in itself causes trauma. And so it's probably higher than that. And we don't think about when the brain is traumatized, it affects our thoughts, our moods, how we interact with other people. It affects just a lot of different things. And so the numbers are really, really high. On top of that, you have to, and so then the other part of that is the trauma of maybe not having loving parents. So I get a lot of working with youth and then adults, because I see a lot of adults well who I can trace everything back to childhood in terms of why they, are suffering the way they are. So even in that regards, of my mom didn't love me, my dad didn't love me. So I know then if they don't love me, nobody's gonna love me. So I don't need to love myself. And so that's why I think a lot of the kids today are killing themselves. And on top of that, you see in social media, they have these suicide groups where they're promoting the best way to ease the pain is to, just end your life. So I would say the number is higher.
Diallo, you go, and then I'll go after you. You're on mute. Oh, there.
Are you familiar with Fanonian psychology and his concept of, in a crass way, I'll say that there's healing in the killing and there's medicine in the murder, are you familiar with, or if you can give me some thoughts where Fanonian articulated is the only way for the colonized man to heal is to strike a blow against his oppressor, because it seems as though you're suggesting that we cannot engage in revolutionary organization or secure liberation or build unless we're healed. But the trauma is not post, it's perpetual trauma. So, you could heal from something today and be exposed to it tomorrow. And also, how are white people with the deep-seated pathology? I mean, a book just came out. I've been reading some excerpts from the new book on Trump, where he's been traumatized all his whole life, but it didn't stop him from taking ultimate power. So I understand trauma, and I'm not trying to downplay the trauma, but in terms of where trauma fits in the context of Black leadership and Black liberation, is it really as much of an obstruction as we claim it to be when we look at the overall history of decolonization movements, revolutionary struggles, guerrilla movements from Latin America to the African continent to Black liberation struggles here in the United States? I hope that wasn't true, but that's my question.
Okay.
Well, so my thoughts are, obviously, we are a smaller portion of the population. So white people can kind of be off and do their own stuff and have their own issues and difficulties. I'm not saying that what we are experiencing has a lot to do with white people. I'm saying that that's part of the system and we bought into that system. And so as a result, when people are choosing to have kids and then they are not taking care of those kids, we're adding to it. So we're already at a disadvantage because of racism, but then you have families that are not doing what they need to do, or you have individuals that are not doing what they need to do, like I said, for themselves, for their bodies, taking care of what happens with your mind, so that you can fight the fight. You can't fight the fight if you are sick, if you are emotionally not well, if you're trying to fight in your own household or you're trying to fight to survive. There's so much that happens that if you don't address that, like the core, you can't address everything else. So I don't know if I answered your question. I don't think it's like one size fits all. So a lot of the work that I do, I really just address the individual, but I know that there's a lot of suffering because we feel like we're not supposed to have any pain. And so we cause a lot more suffering by doing things like if we don't want to feel something, we may start to use drugs. And so then now you have another problem. So if you don't want to feel pain, now you're getting addicted to alcohol and drugs. And so then that causes a whole nother set of issues. And then you make whole nother set of decisions based off of being on alcohol and drugs, that then maybe now you have a child that you don't want to take care of. And now this child comes into the world and they're like, well, nobody wants me. So what's the point of being here? And so my point is, ultimately, if people are dying for mental health reasons or killing themselves with suicide, we're not going to have enough people to fight the fight, is what I'm saying. If we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to be on the front lines to fight any fight. So that's my suggestion. It's just you gotta heal whatever that is and whatever that involves. I don't think everybody necessarily has the same things that they need to heal from, but I would just say you need to heal.
All right, I got a question. In terms of mental health and healing, how would you advise for us to approach leaders or people who say things in public, either knowing that they could have a mental health, like how do you advise a mental health issue? How do you advise us engaging with people if they're suffering from something and addressing them publicly? Does that make sense?
How do you address someone who's a leader that has a mental health illness?
Yeah, like somebody's out there front. Okay, if Diallo says something publicly, and we could tell that he has a mental health issue, like, do you advise us not to address him publicly, or like, you mean how do we work around having these issues and also competing or arguing or debating?
I don't, again, I don't think it's, I think it's individual and it depends on the situation. I think sometimes we try to do, like we have this one size fits all, and that can cause more problems. So for me, for me professionally, I really try to connect to the person to see what they need. So I don't just, if I can tell a person won't benefit from addressing them publicly, I won't address them publicly, but I feel if they would benefit from it, then I will. I think one of the biggest things in our community is everything that happens in this house should stay in this house, or everything should be kept secret. So I don't believe in secrets or hiding things, because it doesn't help. It doesn't help with healing. It doesn't help with growth. So I think it just depends on the person, what's being said, what's being done, and how you, and the outcome that you're seeking. Because I think sometimes people do things without necessarily recognizing the outcome, without recognizing why they choose to do this, what's really important to them, like even in life. So what makes you choose to do what you do? Understand that. What do you value most? And so if you're not doing that, then it just just doing something just to do it.
Okay, I appreciate that. Definitely the concept of, I wonder when we do critique, I know everybody do it on social media in different places, but do we have an outcome that we want to achieve? So I think that's an interesting thing. Who's next? Do we have, want to go in row? We want to go to Laura, then Ivan and Ernest? That way? You can go in. All right, go ahead, Laura.
All right, the question that I'm going to answer is question number 18, which is, let me pull it right back up. How do the minority, white/Europeans of the world control groups, Black/Africans that represent the majority? And I'm going to say they do it by controlling the narrative. Kind of, if you look at it, when TV came around, they were mainly only letting white people on it, and Black people would be, if once Black people actually were allowed to be on television as well, they had to go back and be the help, or small background parts, never the leads. It was actually not that long ago that they actually started having more movies starring Black people. You saw how long it took them to have a Black Disney princess. So I think by constantly showing us as less than and as background characters, they made it appear as though they were the majority. Most plays, same thing. So it's like, if you have all of the media that you're consuming and you're stuck to one area, there are a lot of people who never leave their hometown. So if you're stuck in your hometown, you don't know what's outside. You don't know what's in another state over. And if you have no concept of what the outside world looks like outside of your own community, and the only window you have to the outside world is the media, and the media is only portraying certain people, then you're going to assume that outside there are only certain people. I can speak on this firsthand because I grew up in Chattanooga, and it was primarily white. I didn't see a lot of Black people, so I didn't really think that there were that many of me. And it's really sad to say that it took me really until I was able to visit Atlanta for the first time to actually be like, wow, there are a lot of Black people in the South, which is really sad to say, but that was my life for so long. So I think that that's how they're able to suppress the majority of Black people, is by just controlling the narrative. They also control the history books, because once again, the school systems, all of the kids are put in these school systems fed a history that only shows certain sides of us. You're only taught about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. Those are your main two heroes. They rarely talk about Malcolm X, and if they do, that's it. You don't really hear about anything. You don't hear about the Black people who fought in the wars of the country when it was coming up. You don't, it's sad to say this, but I learned watching Hamilton taught me a little bit more about what was going on than what I was learning in grade school. So that just kind of goes to show you that it's kind of sad, but we were suppressed. Our history was suppressed. Us in the media has been suppressed. Our accomplishments have been suppressed. And that's how you can effectively make someone think they're less than and therefore control them, because they start to believe that they are less than.
Go ahead, Diallo. I'll go after him.
Tupac, hello? Can y'all hear me?
We can hear
I'm
you.
sorry. Sometimes I'm going in and out in my own. I'm sorry.
You clear.
Two parts of the question. Do you see any market change in the power dynamic or progress of Black people since our presence in the media has elevated and our presence in history books, Africana studies class since, 60s and 70s? Do you see any material change in the power dynamics, our relationship to our oppressors, with more inclusion or representation? Number one. Number two, it's very curious. That you left out violence and the capacity to do violence, to kill mass amounts of people over a large geographical area as related to white power and control? Where does their capacity and will to kill a lot of people, commit genocide and depopulation of areas fit into that power structure and relate to the narrative that they control?
Excellent questions, and thank you for bringing that up. You're absolutely right. I did fail to mention the willingness to be brutal, and that is a huge part, because I don't believe that Black people naturally want to start fights and kill people. I think that is a learned behavior, and it's an attack. If when you're attacked, you're going to attack back. So I honestly do believe that the violence that we see so prevalent in the streets today stemmed from the fact that this whole country was taken over by mass murder and fear. And fear is actually a huge part of that. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it is, even today, we are being controlled by fear. What's being portrayed in the media right now, even though we are in the media a lot, what are we seeing? We're seeing a bunch of people being killed. We're seeing a bunch of, hearing stories about people getting hanged and burned. And it's almost like they're highlighting all of the violence and all of our torment and all of our torture. So then that is what's in the forefront of our mind. We're not seeing, oh, let's highlight the accomplishments. Let's highlight what's good that's happening. All we're seeing is how we're highlighting taking down the evil parts. So our mindset is still in a dark place. And if we're creating from a sense of just trying to react, then we're not really responding and being able to renew ourselves and to rebuild our reputations more so. So I think if we actually had representation that was positive and actually showing more of the good side of things, even all of the protests going on, they want to spend more time talking about the rioting and the looting and the shooting, but they're not talking about the positive people, the communities that are coming together, that are growing, that are talking about trying to heal and change and build up together and put our money together and build communities back up. No one talks about that, because once again, who's controlling the media? And the only way to really fight that is if we make our own media and actually get out there and put our money together and actually start showing people, hey, this is what's going on, and we're actually going to pay attention to it and not just push it to the side because, oh, that's just some little Black, side project that someone put up. I think if we all started treating each other like professionals, and we actually started portraying ourselves as professionals as we're showing ourselves and what we're doing, then people would take us more seriously. We as people would take ourselves more seriously, and other races would take us more seriously.
So I have a question, and my question, I had the question before, and then you just made my question even easier to ask. So let's say there's a leader or a person out front who's creating a media source that's Black, right? But they are saying that we need to stop talking about race. Race is not an issue. And they're pretty much using the white narrative. What do you think about those people, and how should they be handled by the rest of us?
I think that they do need to be called out on it. I think there is a way to do it. I think it has to be tactful in the sense of, so like, say if, for instance, if Tyler Perry or Oprah or someone who has their own network like that came out and said, you know, something that was putting us down and basically trying to make us submissive again. I think that if people came out in the masses like we do, I'm not saying we need to be tearing people down. Keep it tasteful, because I think when we criticize, sometimes we can get in the habit of just, you know, calling names and reverting to just trying to hurt feelings because our feelings were hurt. So we do low blows. That's not smart. And then people don't take what we're saying serious. If we came at the argument and said like, look, you know, what you're saying is degrading to our people for bullet point reasons, and just laid it out like that, and petitioned them, I think that it would almost kind of force their hand to have to do something different, which is kind of what we have to do at this point. You know, if they're not going to support our best interest, then they need to come down. and that's just, it's just that simple. If they either help us or they need to step down. And if they don't step down willingly, then we're going to have to make it obvious so they'll have to. And I saw someone wanted to ask me a question as well. So
All right.
I'll get you there.
So Toya first, and then Chief.
Okay, I'll try to make it quick. My
2 minutes.
question goes back to where you were talking about the white narrative, and it trickles down to the education system, like you said. So I wanted to know if you feel that integration was detrimental to the Black people and that we need to go back to a segregated type of educational system. Would that be better for us as a people in our advancement, or what should we do in your opinion?
I don't think that is necessary. I don't think that we need to necessarily segregate the schools again or the people again. If you want to have communities or whatever, that's fine. But as far as just saying that white people or other races in general are not allowed, I don't think that's necessarily the answer. I think if other races want to hear about our history, then they should be allowed to. I also feel like they need to hear it. I don't think this needs to just be a thing taught in Black schools. I think this needs to be a thing taught in all schools, because this is American history. And, you know, even world history needs to include all parts and shades of the world, not just the white sides.
Right, but how do we control the narrative in the education system?
We
I'm
control
sorry, Larry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. We control the narrative in the education system by saying, if you aren't going to put this in our school system, I'm pulling my child out. I'm not funding it.
All right, let Chief go. She got 45 seconds to answer your question. Wait, let me see the whole name. It says Chief because the name is cutting out.
Hello?
Yeah,
Can you
go
hear
ahead.
me?
Yes.
Okay, so I was just curious. You spoke about professionalism and said that if we were professional, we would be taken more serious. And I just wanted to know, how are you defining professionalism, considering when we wore the suits and we spoke like Europeans, we were still attacked like dogs and with hoses and things like that? Like, how are you defining it?
I'm defining professionalism as in if you go to get work from someone you know, and then they don't deliver because, oh, they're like, oh, well, you know, this my buddy, my homegirl, I don't have to, you know, do too much because, you know, or us trying to get discounts from each other all the time and not wanting to pay full price. That's kind of more so what I meant. People trying to give the church discount or getting work for free. And more so just the general evasion of conversations about money and finances. So I think that it's not everybody, but there's a bad narrative, unfortunately, and stereotype that is, I've noticed, has been being broken, but it just we need to hold each other accountable.
Okay. All right, time's up. So we're gonna go in the order like I see on the screen. I don't know if y'all see it, but Ivan is next, then Ernest, then Asafo, then Toya, then Shaughnessy, then Simonetta, then Chief, then Ada or Adia. So Ivan, go ahead.
All right, so the question that I picked is a basic one about what the discussion is. It's number 2. Black people shouldn't debate or argue in public, true or false? So I'm going to take the true and false out of it. I think that it is partially true and partially false. So when it comes to debate between two people educated in whatever narrative it is, I think that two people, and when I say educated, I'm not talking about formally educated, like you researched and you have your beliefs and you want to defend your beliefs against someone else who believes something different. And also they have an understanding of the concepts that they're actually going to be debating about. I fully support that. That's on a macro level. On a micro level, I think that when we do debate when we do challenge and correct individuals who need education, we kind of crush like potential early, because a lot of people understand like America isn't seriously vested in education. So a lot of people don't have a full understanding. They might not have a developed understanding like you might have of issues of Black culture, of Black history, of just their general roots. So when we do correct some of these individuals, it can be in a harsh manner, and we can do more detriment than we do as far as good that we could have potentially done with advancing those people. So like, for example, I will use myself as a prime example, because I probably do this daily, where I might have a debate or somebody might make a comment on a status, and then I challenge it in a way where that person, if they were ever to think about coming into the fold or educating themselves, it definitely wouldn't be from my influence whatsoever. I don't push them further towards educating themselves. My responses can be a bit shrewd and just really curt, to the point where it pushes them away from educating themselves on Black issues when I could have addressed it in a manner that helped them. And then also there's also cancel culture. So as Diallo said earlier, people who are leaders change, and their philosophies change. People can evolve, people can devolve. So I think that we also need to be more willing to re-educate individuals, or to attempt to share our knowledge and redirect people who are out there just wrong, because they have the potential for growth.
All right, it's been 15 seconds. All right, who has a clarifying question?
I do.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so when we talk about whether we should essentially air our dirty laundry out in public or debate in public, me personally, it feels uncomfortable. In my area, like I see a lot of like Korean churches, Korean schools, Korean institutions, and they have that as like separate for themselves to sort of like reaffirm their identity and their sense of community, rather than like insisting that the public schools or institutions like teach about Korean history. They have their own separate places. So for me, all of this surrounds the idea of us needing sort of like a safe space to hash out whatever disagreements that we may have amongst ourselves, rather than doing it publicly. So do you think that's a solution also?
I think that places where we can engage and educate each other without the judgmental eyes, because me and you having a debate on the timeline or a random post is going to be people pressing like, people pressing hearts, people pressing laugh reactions, and it turns into a circus. It's not going to be it could be beneficial, but it's a lot of factors and potential for it to go left. So I do feel like we need places such as this forum right here. Like, I'm not discrediting that this work is happening on certain levels, just like we're having this discussion right now, where we can talk about, educate each other, and have our differences and debate them in a productive manner, rather than to have it go how I've seen it go repeatedly. People, this whole thing about my block list is strong, my block game is strong, and people just not being willing to exchange ideas and listen to each other, learn. And some people do need to be dealt with harshly, shrewdly. There are elements of that, and people do need to be addressed in a direct manner in certain instances. But do I think that it's overused and we overdo it and actually do damage to people that can be brought in the fold? Yes, I do think we do. So I do think, yeah, it would be beneficial to have spaces where we can exchange. I don't know about safe spaces, because exchanges could be, you could get your feelings hurt. You could get your feelings hurt in one of these debates. So I don't know how safe it would be, but I do think we need those places to exchange.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, we have another one. Go ahead, Diallo. We got 5 minutes.
You mentioned that unpleasant words, unkind experiences, or negative experiences with other Black people will provoke a Black person to leave the movement or abandon, whatever concept of Black unity or Black struggle that they felt that they were a part of, would have been a potential part of. And you said that conflict or some potential negative experience might get them to leave. Are those type of individuals worth trying to retain, in your opinion?
So it depends. So what we're talking about is somebody, so anything in its infancy is delicate. So in those stages, you need to, if you deal with a person and they have negative experiences in those infancy stages, then you kill their potential to grow into what potentially they could be. And we see this happen with, if you are dealing with your child and you deal with your child in a manner where you tell your child they're never going to be anything. You can destroy that child for the rest of their life just based off those statements that they were dealt with in an early stage. So I feel like when we do deal with certain people and we see they simply need to be re-educated, we need to have some tact and patience. I don't think that it's necessarily that they're weak or weak-minded, because they could be in a state like Tanel said, we're dealing with a whole bunch of trauma and people who are hurt. I know myself, I'm from Philadelphia. I grew up in inner city Philadelphia. I grew up with all the issues that came from poverty. I know I had PTSD long ago. So my young self dealing with 19-year-old Ivan, I know he was an idiot or a dumbass, and straight from out of inner city Philadelphia. So if someone was to address me in a manner that I address people, if I was to address my younger self, I know I would turn myself away from productive means and back into the negativity.
But to follow up, can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, you got 2 minutes.
To follow up, other organizations that are worthy of our youth participation, if you want to join the military, they're going to make you go through grueling intro and shave your head and tell you you're nothing but scum, drop and give me 20, put you through sleep deprivation. If you want to join a sorority or a fraternity, we all know about the hazing that goes on there. We know, when I was getting my national certification as a radiographer, I know many sleepless nights and a lot of suffering and a lot of unattentive professors. It seems like our Black liberation struggle or the Black conscious community, we feel like we got to coddle people in there when this is the most worthy. I think we don't value our movement enough. Why not make it a process that they have to be willing to endure some struggle, if not intellectual, if none, deal with some debates to get into it? Why is the Black conscious community the only population that I find? I mean, you go join a church and they're gonna be like, give up drinking, give up women, give up running the street. They're gonna push you through. But every time I hear this about joining, we gotta make sure we don't offend people, we don't hurt people's feelings, and we coddle them into it. And I think that's why the Black conscious community have the most aggressively spinning revolving door of any other Black population in our community. in the form of a
So
question.
I'm glad you brought this question up because I was actually going to say that in my last statement, but I just left it out because I don't always like to bring up the military in every response. But I am a staff sergeant in the military, so the process of breaking a soldier down, that's what it is. When you go to basic training, they're breaking down the civilian characteristics that you brought with you, and then they're instilling their own values. So essentially, it's a form of brainwashing. One, right out the gate, they're taking out what's civilian in you, and they're replacing it with things they need to get you to do what they want you to do. So I wouldn't exactly use that as the greatest example, but also in doing so, there's specific parameters and things that they do not do because it will destroy your person's confidence. It will cause them to commit suicide. They will have high dropout rates. So that process, and it's like a seasoning process, is very structured so that they don't have individuals go in certain areas where they are no longer usable. So I do, they're like how we would address each other on maybe a social media post. A drill sergeant would be fired from his job for speaking to a private that way. There are certain things they can say, and there's a whole book of things they can't say.
But the military does have high dropouts, high suicide. We get 20 suicides a day of former and currently enlisted men. All the issues you're saying that the military avoids actually have. But I'm not suggesting, I'm not talking about the specific treatments. I'm just saying that to join this group, you have to be willing to work and earn your position. We're not just going to bring you in here like a coddled baby. We're going to stand on our position and our values and our mission, as opposed to trying to tiptoe around people and not offend them in order to make them affectionate towards us. That was more my point. Not that we should mimic any of my examples.
That definitely need to. I know for a fact we're gonna talk about that in the second half because that's an extremely good point. When you think about a revolution, right? And I think Malcolm X. I remember some of his quotes about like the revolution is like we the only one that's like loving everybody and love our neighbors and all these other. It's like these crazy ideas of revolution, but. So that's going to be a good point. Ernest, you ready for your question?
So can you hear me? Is the sound good?
Yep, perfect.
So I'm going to take question 4. Has anyone answered that so far? I came on late.
No, but even if we double up, it's cool.
Okay. So, I'm digging this format too, brother. Wherever you got this format.
I got it from this genius guy I know. Last name, same my last name.
In your opinion and assessment, what is wrong with Black America? So there are 2 ways I want to address the question. The first is this. I don't think anything's wrong with Black America. So I say nothing is wrong with Black America. One of the individuals earlier talked about the narrative and how the narrative is controlled by a mostly Anglo-European perspective. So the reason why I say nothing's wrong with Black America is this. What can be defined as Black folk in the context of this country? Live, breathe, love, experience life in the same ways that every other ethnic group or racial classification of people experience life. And what do I mean by that? I mean our response to adversity, our response to systemic oppression is a human response. And many of the people throughout the history of the world have responded similarly. One quote comes to mind from James Baldwin, and he says, as long as you think you are white, then there is no hope for you. What can be conceived as by most people, what it means to be Black, is actually by definition the antithesis of what it means to be white. And it was created from the fantasy of wealthy white landowning men. So I personally don't believe in the concept of America. I think it is an illusion. I think it is myth. and not myth in a favorable sense. I understand that I'm a citizen of the United States, but I do not believe in what is called America. That is a fictitious place. So I don't believe that there can be a Black America. I define myself as an African born and raised here in America. And I understand being an African born and raised here in America, that the true definition or evolution of Blackness was not as the antithesis of whiteness. Blackness was there first. It actually was an Africanness. It was an Africanness, not a Blackness. So I don't think anything is wrong with Black folk. There's no such thing as Black on Black crime. Most individuals commit crime and kill one another in very similar percentages. It happens among people who live in close proximity to one another. We do live in a segregated society. I don't believe in the myth of a Black America. I am an African, and my question to the group is, at what point did Africans cease being African and become Black?
All right. Beautiful. Who has the first Who has the first clarifying question? It sounds like some other guys. Make sure it's a quick question.
Okay. To your point about the Black versus African, you know, I was listening to somebody, I think it was, it'll lead to a question. So I was listening to Yvette Carnell, who is sort of like the ringleader of the American Descendants of Slave movement. And I feel as though, from what I got from her, she said that the cord was cut when enslaved Africans came to America and they lost their Africanness and became essentially a new race of people. So I think the following responses to that will depend on how Black America sees themselves. And what steps do you think it will take to get to that point of having a more African sense of connection to the continent or to the people? How do you cultivate that when there's this constant narrative that we're a whole new group of people, we're no longer Africans, we're something else?
So
Thank you.
You're talking about the group ADOS, correct?
Yes.
So I understand the philosophy behind that organization. Also understand where it comes from. It stems from, again, another participant talked about healing and pain and how some people respond to pain and how we need to heal. Is that correct? Did Ms. Jones talk about that earlier? So when I assess and critique the ADOS philosophy, I understand that it comes from a deep-seated and rooted tradition of pain. I disagree with it wholeheartedly, but I understand where it comes from. So I think their narrative isn't as popular. I just think they talk loud. You know what I mean? So I don't think it is as popular as as folks believe that it is. I'll say this. As an educator, I understand the belief that the cord was cut. I understand that we say things like we were robbed of our names, robbed of our language, and a large portion of that is true. However, much of how we season our food, the funky clothes we wear, the way we dance, the way we love, the true tradition, the way we talk, by and large, Ebonics is not a dialect of English. It's more of an African language, not dialect, defined by linguists. Then it's more of an African speaking language than it is English, than it is European. The problem is we don't know these things. These things aren't taught. Part of the healing process is an awareness. And part of nation building starts in just assisting people in becoming aware of who and what they are, right? And I could go further, but I'll stop there.
I got one, and y'all can get in line after me. So you talk about either hegemony or domination and a response to that, and then you talk about there's nothing wrong with us. Could you elaborate a little bit on the responses our people are taking,
okay,
and what to do with allowed or leader person who's taking the wrong response, how to handle them?
Again, things coming full circle. The brother Diallo talked about how to deal with leadership earlier, right? He believes that there are some leaders that need to be held accountable, some need to be canceled. Am I correct? Right. Could definitely critique. There's nothing wrong with critique. If I understand your question correctly, when I say there's nothing wrong with us, I don't want to give the impression that we don't have issues. I don't want to give the impression that there aren't any adverse effects of systemic racial oppression and patriarchy. I don't want to give that impression. That's not what I'm promoting. What I'm promoting is our responses, our lived experiences is a human lived experiences. And I don't believe in white supremacy. I also don't believe in black supremacy. I believe that most oppressed people react similarly. It's just that, again, based on the narrative, part of the oppression is the control, is the narrative that's given, right? And that narrative, part of that narrative is and Asafo talks about this a lot, creating this paradigm of thinking and this understanding that it is something inherently wrong with black people. And once you create this understanding that there's something inherently wrong and there's a deficit and inferiority associated with black people and blackness, then it's much easier to control the people.
All right, who got another clarifying question? He has 3 minutes for his clarifying question. Laura?
My question is, I know you mentioned basically that we forgot about our Africanness. What would you say about the Black Americans, the Black people who were here originally, the Black original Americans?
When you say, what doctrine are you referring to when you say, you mean that we're here prior to Columbus?
Yes.
Okay, so again, there are two different schools of thought. There are some people who believe that black folks are the indigenous people. And then there are others who believe that black folks traveled here and amalgamated and traveled back and forth from the continent to the Americas hundreds of years prior to Columbus. Those are two different schools of thought, as I understand. So I need to be clear, which one are you referring to?
I was referring to the thought that they were here initially, but now that you say that, everyone could have migrated as well. So that could be two in the same. So I guess I'd like to hear just your take on that in general, for whichever you'd like to answer on.
I have not seen evidence that suggests that what could be defined as Africans are indigenous to North and South America. I have found evidence that suggests, scholarship that suggests that Africans traveled here long before Columbus, understood the trade, and some folks stayed, and some folks went back, and generation after generation, there was a constant cultural exchange between folks indigenous to what can be considered the African continent and folks who are indigenous to North, Central, and South America and the Caribbean. That is what I tend to lean toward that scholarship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we have 50 seconds. Any other quick question? Okay. Thank you, brother Ernest. All right, Asafo, you up? So, bro, your phone, your name says iPhone, but we were going in order. You could be after Asafo, and make sure you already have the question that you're going to answer. If you don't know the question you're going to answer, the questions are in the messaging. You can find your question. But Asafo, go first. And you.
Thank you very much. My question that I chose to answer or respond to is question number 10. What are your thoughts about Black people who regurgitate the bootstrap narrative or other weaponized phrases created by hegemonic white persons? Okay, my initial thoughts are that they're extremely stupid, about as stupid as the people who believe that poverty is a mindset, people who use meaningless and anti-black phrases like circulate the black dollar, pool our resources, black capitalism, and buy black, and these other absurd phrases that are used to as distractions and to divert black people away from real solutions. But the problem I see here is, Larry, is that we, the people who promulgate these phrases and who use them to beat working class black people over the head with, really don't rely on any type of data outside of contrived anecdotes, which is ultimately meaningless. So this is my cousin's friend's daughter's husband, did this, so this should be a solution for black people. They did this and they were successful, so all black people should do this. It doesn't hold up. It doesn't wash. Now we, as you know, whatever I say, I don't lean on my own opinion. I use the data. What do the data say? And we have plenty of information, plenty of research coming out saying that this kind of bootstrap narrative, this poverty is a mindset narrative, these Horatio Alger myths about pulling ourselves up out of poverty through our just sheer will and talent are just simply not true, have no basis in reality at all. I'll draw your attention to a few things. I'm not going to go too deep in the material because I'm short on time. Thomas Shapiro's book, Toxic Inequality, where he talks about people who have that mindset of, I'm working hard, I'm pulling myself up by my bootstraps, I'm doing whatever I have to do, but a convergence of circumstances and policies and ideologies are put in place, anti-black, anti-working class, that maintain them in poverty, irrespective of their Herculean efforts. Another report here, bootstraps are for black kids. At the very time, black children are being told, well, you're gonna have, this is a meritocracy and you're gonna have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. White children are being gifted billions and billions and billions of dollars from their parents in order to be able to jumpstart their adulthood and being, their entrance into the economy. Another report speaks for itself. Umbrellas don't make it rain. Why studying and working hard isn't enough for Black Americans. So there's plenty of research out here that kind of dispels the myth of hard work and bootstraps being the solution to our problems.
All right. Who got a first clarifying question? Ivan got one, and I'll go after Ivan. Danelle, did you raise your hand?
All right, so my question is for the individuals who do strongly push and believe those mindsets as far as changing the situation when it comes to systemic oppression, what would you do or say to redirect or correct these individuals? Like I said, the other day I have a friend who is one of these individuals, and he became extremely successful, but obviously he started making money by pushing that narrative. So I guess it becomes pretty profitable for people to start to propagate those myths. So what would you do or say to redirect somebody or help them to re-educate themselves?
Well, like I said during my answer, one of the first things I always do is I always ask people, can you prove that? Where's the documentation? Where's the data? Where's the research that shores up or supports your argument? We can't just go based off of opinion. We can't go based off, petty anecdotes. What research have you done or can you cite to support that, this type of narrative is effective in solving? And almost without exception, they can't come up with anything. No matter how much you try to ask them, no matter how many different ways you ask the question, they always rely on opinion, They always rely on, you know, this, well, this is how it helped me, or, you know, whatever BS. You know, but I would show them the data that refutes what they're arguing. And the data speaks for itself. The data is irrefutable, in my opinion. And if you're not willing to accept it, or not even willing to even look into it, or read the information or anything like that, and you're just comfortable with believing what you believe with no basis in reality at all, then I really don't have any time for you. You know, you just need to, you know, you deserve to be insulted, you know, and you don't need to be in this movement. You don't need to be in it at all, because what you're doing is you're claiming you're all pro-Black and everything, but you're spewing, you know, anti-Black rhetoric.
So, in that same area, so we know that we are the most religious crew based off of data, like Black folks, and very emotional, right? And so let's say you have these leaders who have this kind of like pseudo pro-Blackness, and they got a lot of followers, and you might have a young sister up or a young man up, and they are spewing like some really counterproductive, harsh things for Black America. How do you navigate critiquing them when majority of the people are gonna look at you as the problem? You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna be the problem, and you're hating on this young sister, or misogynistic, or whatever the case may be. You're gonna catch a bunch of names in response to that. How do you navigate that?
Again, you know, it has to, and I say this knowing full well that people would rather rely on their little pet theories and pet ideas, even though they don't have any basis in reality. But at some point, we're going to have to compare the data of one ideology to the data and research of another ideology and see how it holds up. Okay, that's why a lot of folks who are when we do these discussions, Larry, they don't want to come up here and do these discussions because they don't have the data. What they're spewing is just their opinion, and somehow they benefit from it, either from their pecuniary interests or from a deep psychological level. They it's just best if what they believe isn't shredded to pieces in a debate. Again, I have to go back to the science. We have to be, as revolutionaries, we have to be, I don't want to say dispassionate, but we have to be scientific about this. You know, we can't go off of opinions. We have to go off what the research says, what the data says, what the data say, and then base our solutions around that, okay? And, you know, we have to be able to just put out a different narrative to people to help them, you know, just move the wool over their eyes, from over their eyes, you know?
Okay. Who else got a clarifying question? 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Ernest?
Yeah, real quick. So many of our most well-respected scholars, spiritual leaders, you know, Malcolm, even Martin at some Du Bois, Garvey even talked about pooling the Black, pulling our resources and Black entrepreneurship. Because much of, let me ask it this way. Are you optimistic that we can counter the narrative, simply because, and I ask simply because so many of our most prominent Black intellectuals and leaders pushed Black entrepreneurship. Do you think we can turn this thing around? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, they were wrong, and you know, we need to be able to assess their wrongness in its proper context. You know, and they were just wrong. I mean, and they, you know, it was, you know, they were. I believe with all my heart that they really believed that that would be a solution, but now that we know better, we need to do better. Now, as far as my optimism, you know, you know me, Larry, Ivan, others, you know, I'm extremely pessimistic, and that reflects. You see that being reflected in a lot of my posts. I'm extremely cynical about where we're going as a movement, because it seems like, you know, the person with the most YouTube followers and the person with the most likes on Facebook and the person with the highest funded Patreon is the leader now. And you know, invariably, and we have people coming into this movement, you know, who've never read anything, who've never done any research, who've never educated themselves or have any political literacy. They like the YouTube video and now they're a part of the movement. You know, so and that's absurd. So I'm pessimistic about where we're going. I think, you know, all we have to have now is, you know, Chase Bank and CNN and MSNBC and CNBC promote, you know, somebody and say, this is the future of Black America, and we're all going to follow behind this person because, you know, solely on the basis that they say this is the leader, you know.
All right. Thank you. So, brother, I keep forgetting your name, but the brother with the iPhone, you next. You got your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My name is Anansi, brother.
Anansi, that's right. So
Yeah,
tell us the question, and then when you start answering, we'll start the time of 3 minutes.
All right. So the question I'm going to attack is actually, I'm gonna just put question number 2 and question number 11 in the same boat, since it's kind of the same thing. You feel me? And that question being, Black people shouldn't debate or argue in public, true or false. That's number 2. And number 11 is, when you challenge Black people in public, are you hurting the larger community because? All right, so you can go ahead and start it for it. So personally, before we even get into if we should be arguing or debating, we need to worry about the state of Black people as a whole. You know what I'm saying? One thing that I realized that isn't happening in like my peer community or like my community in general is that the conversations aren't coming up. You know what I'm saying? So when you'll have people that are on a higher conscious level, you know what I'm saying? One thing that you always see them do is bumping heads, you know what I'm saying? Fighting ideologies, you feel me? Analogies, how they feel about something, how they feel about God, how they feel about religion, how they feel about systematic issues, everything, you know what I'm saying? And being that we are in a state that we have to just keep on bumping heads in order to gain our answer, you feel me? I feel like this is definitely necessary, you feel me? Because you got to worry about the brother or the sister that's on the streets, you feel me? And they have no sense of consciousness at all, you know what I'm saying? But when you see another 2 brothers or another 2 sisters going at it and just debating, because, you know, it's not like we really like, you know, throwing hands out here or about to start shooting at each other based off our ideology, you feel me? So when the person who's not conscious to anything at all, you know what I'm saying, and they see the brothers and sisters going at it and they debating, that's going to give them a state of mind of, damn, I don't know anything about what they are talking about, but let me tune in and tap in so I can figure out what's going on. And just because of them wanting to take the initiative of tapping in, now they in a whole different space of mental thinking, you know what I'm saying, or the different space of mental clarity, just because the seed was planted through a debate or through a disagreement, you know what I'm saying? So, because essentially that's how I felt like I got into consciousness, you feel me? I used to just watch the debates, you know what I'm saying? As a being that I used to practice Islam, or being I used to practice being a Hebrew Israelite, you know what I'm saying? I would look at it from these point of views, but then I would look at it and see, I never learned anything about ancient Kemet. So then I see brothers who are representing ancient Kemet or sisters who are representing ancient Kemet, you feel me? And they put me in the mindset of, damn, maybe I should tap in and see what ancient Kemet is about, instead of me just holding my ideologies personal into self and not letting go and not having an open mind to learning anything new. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that debating and us just having these conversations in public is definitely necessary. It's the age of the internet. So we talking right here now, we both from Baltimore, but somebody from New York or somebody from LA can be tuned in, and now they're on the conversation simply because we did it to the public. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like it's very necessary, and I feel like it's, you know, efficient and very crucial for the Black community for us to have these debates. But we can't let this get in the way of what we're supposed to be doing. And that's it. That's my piece.
All right. Who got the first clarifying question? I have one. So at what point do it turns into just intellectual masturbation, getting nowhere, and if you want to be as courageous enough to call out a person or people who kind of just intellectually masturbate and not really moving us forward?
I feel like it's all about just setting the time and place for these things. You know what I'm saying? Of course, we don't want to let it just become like, you know, like you said, intellectual masturbation when it's like nothing is coming from it. You know what I'm saying? We're not building anything. We're not growing. We're not doing anything from it except for just keep on clashing. And like I said, it has to be a time and place for it. So we need to like, you know, like I said, just set it at the value that it is, you know what I'm saying, of just building or just like, you know, building that science and that knowledge, you feel me? Because it's times like on Sundays, you know what I'm saying, people go to church on Sundays to get the word, you know what I'm saying? So we need to dedicate a day or something, you know what I'm saying, or a time, an hour, when we going to do this, but we shouldn't let that become the focal of what the mission is for the future, you know what I'm saying? Like we just going to keep on debate after year, and there's nothing that's came from it. We haven't been able to, you know, get any programs, start a homeschooling system, nothing, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's all about just like, I guess you would say, taking it back to question number 10, strapping the boots, you know what I'm saying? Because yeah, as long as we keep on just focusing on that and not putting any groundwork behind it, then yeah, it's just, that's what it's just going to continue to be, intellectual masturbating. But if you taking that upon self, let's talk, let's debate, and then at the end of it, we figure out what we can do for the community as a whole to make it better, then yeah, then we got something great coming from it. So it's just all about setting the time for it.
Okay. All right, anybody else got one? Go ahead, Laura.
All right. So would you say that it's would be beneficial then to have more of these discussions with more people than just, you know, our people, like other, you know, our white people or really any other race, to have, do you think it's all right to have public conversations like these, healthy debates in a public arena with more than with just Black people?
Yes, and I definitely, I feel like that it's important for people that's not of hue or not of our race specifically to hear these things, because when it come down to a public representation of Black people, we have no party, you know what I'm saying? We have no people that's going to say that these are the things. So when they can listen in and tune in on these conversations, it's all like, I feel like, one, we have to be careful about what we're going to be saying. If we're going to be doing this to the public, for the Asian community, for the white people community, you feel me? We need to make sure that we're not giving them all the jewels and everything that we want to do. You know what I'm saying? But at the sense, when we are talking about power and we don't have, like I said, we don't have that. So sometimes, even though I feel like we shouldn't leave it into the hands of another people to take care of us or to keep us in mind, but if we share these thoughts, that's how we can just, like I said, plant the seed of it in their head. You know what I'm saying? So when they do start talking about what the African-American community wants, if they can't find a right representative, they know damn well, I know from this, the conversation I was tuned in, that Black people feel like this and they feel like that about the situation. So this is what we can contribute just based off of what we know of the community already. Like the same way how, you know, like when they build these corner stores, they know that the hoods is a food desert, you know what I'm saying? So they put these things right there because they know that that's what the people want. They want something to snack on. They want something to, you know, feed that energy, you feel me? So yeah, that's why we got the corner stores open. So if we're not going to do it for self, these conversations need to be heard for them so they can have an outlook and understanding of what we want and how we feel about situations. So yeah, I definitely think that it's necessary and crucial that people of hue are also putting an ear in when it comes down to these conversations. It's just on us to make sure that we're not saying the wrong thing or too much of the right thing. You feel me?
Okay. Anybody else? We got 3 minutes for another clarifying question. Ivan, go ahead. You on mute, Ivan. You on mute.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So the woke community can have a stigma of coming off as, I guess, intellectually like projecting that we're superior or X, Y, and Z. So what can we do for those individuals that you say are trying to tap in to kind of help bring them in the fold rather than them coming off believing in that stigma and fucking rejecting what we're trying to do?
I would say that it's not really our job to bring them in. You know what I'm saying? It's more, they gotta take it upon themselves. Because when you tapping in, just because you tap in and you may understand something in the moment, that doesn't mean that it's your position to hop fully in and start saying, well, I feel like this, well, I feel like that. Definitely when you don't have the information or just that ambition and drive behind it. You know what I'm saying? But in order for them to like I said, I feel like it's really upon self. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, you can learn, you feel me, that, you know, you can just learn today that, you know, us as Black people, we accept melanin. You know what I'm saying? So that doesn't mean that you have the information that, oh, we're literally connected to the sun because of that. So now they should carry that. You're not going to just carry it just because you know this, that you know everything about Black people and being under the sun. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like it's really about that person. If they really want to be in tune, they have to take it upon self. It can't be a thing of us trying to save them or trying to bring them in even more when the door is already open. You know what I'm saying? The door is fully open. Anybody can walk through when it comes out to these conversations and just the community in general. It's not a thing of we have to go grasp and hug these people. People just need to come to the table. They see us sitting here eating, you feel me? Go grab a plate and pull up, you feel me? But it can't be a thing of like, yo, are you hungry? Come eat with us. Like, nah, we already got it settled over here. Just come grab your plate and then come sit with us, you feel me? That's how I feel like that's the best thing we can do for the outsiders that's not fully tapped in, and just leave that door open and the opportunity open. You know what I mean?
So Adia, I don't know if you was trying to ask a question. You got 30 seconds if you want to do it real quick. If not, we can hold it.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay.
I was gonna say I had one real quick, but you know what? We can move it to.
Yeah, we can wait. This is like 20 seconds. All right. So, brother, appreciate you. Miss Latoya is next. So we got Miss Latoya, we got Shaughnessy, Simonetta, Chief, and then Adia, and then we'll be to the last part. We can't hear you if you're talking, Toya.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to go with question number 16, and that's if Black people are prepared for when white people fall. And the answer is absolutely not. We're not organized. We're on social media too much. Like we don't have it together yet. We're ready for it, but we're not prepared. We have too many different views, and we're going in two different paths. Especially, not to step on any toes, but the church folk. I don't think that that's actually going to happen with that audience because of religion and the way that, you know, everyone has that Jesus syndrome, that forgiving syndrome, instead of being, I don't want to say vengeful, but believing in our own, they won't do that. They're too focused on what's right in the Bible's eyes.
You still there? You got cut off. Toya, you still there? Got to mute. Your phone is muted. Your phone is muted right now. So unmute.
All right, I'm not sure how that happened, but I apologize.
Right,
But that's the gist of what I was saying. I don't believe that we're going to be ready because, like I said, we're too split. You have the spiritual folk, you have the church folk, you have the woke, the Black Lives Matter, the people with the fake propaganda. We're too split. We would have to actually come together, come off social media, go back to analog, and actually work together and actually build something, because if they fall and we're so divided, we're going to fall too.
Okay. You got a minute to finish, or you can suspend your time. We can go straight to questions.
Let's go to questions. How y'all feel about that?
All right. Who got the first clarifying question? All right, we got iPhone and Diallo.
All right, peace.
All right, bet. So I definitely agree with what you're saying. Definitely when it comes down to our religious brethren and sisters, you feel me? Because this is a conversation that I have with self just a lot. Like, I don't think that people that's like, you know, still following this Jesus thing is going to be like real crucial to the movement or to what we're trying to do for the future. But one question that I really want to ask, do you think, and I hate to like use Black Panther as a reference, you get what I'm saying? But in Black Panther is like in Wakanda, you know what I'm saying? You know, you would have this tribe, you have that tribe, this tribe, and so forth on. Do you feel like us as the Black community can create a community where we can all still sit, eat, and get these things together that we need to fix for ourselves without religion, creed, and sexuality getting in the way? Because I don't agree with like, even when it comes down to like, you know, the LGBT community, I'm not agreeing with everything that they may stand for. But at the end of the day, if we had a James Baldwin around right now, I would definitely want him to be with us. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, do you feel like it's completely not possible for us to be able to come together as a community simply because of religion, creed, and sexuality and the things that we agree on? Do you think it's no way near possible? Or do you think it's possible that everybody can have their own sector, but we have representatives come together as one when we sit at this round table and we can make decisions for the whole community?
I think that it's possible, but the likelihood is very low. And I hate to say that, but, and I don't want to say that they are the problem, but Christians have the most closed minds that I've ever met. Us of different spiritualities or going through different awakenings, we're not closed-minded. We understand on a different type of level that they just can't seem to accept. You burn sage, they run it. You know, it's a major problem. So, I mean, I hope that one day we can, but honestly, I think it's slim to none.
I have a question.
Wait, Diallo first, then you
Oh,
can go
sorry,
ahead.
Diallo. Sorry about that.
You're on mute, Diallo, mute. You're still on mute.
Oh, okay. What is the fall of white people? What about whether I survive it or not? What is that? What does that mean?
Well, while I didn't make the question up, I definitely took it as just their fall to where they aren't the majority anymore, to where they aren't the ones that are in rule and have the narrative, to where the times actually change, where we have the narrative and that we can expound upon our propaganda. That's how I took it. I'm not sure how the question was supposed to be interpreted, but that's how I interpreted it.
If y'all want me to clarify the question and why I asked it that way, I can. But if not, we can move on. Okay. Seminetta, go ahead.
So when you talk about Black people, I want to expand that. Do you mean just Black people in the United States, or do you mean all Black people, including those who have their own nation states, like in the Caribbean or on the continent of Africa? Thank you. That was my question.
I took that as Black America. I didn't look at everyone as a grand whole, which would be awesome, but I don't think that they're looking at us as a grand whole. I was looking at it as a smaller scale to America only. But grander scale, it might be possible, but still I think it'd be too divided. I think someone mentioned earlier that they said, well, it's believed that the umbilical cord is cut. Ever since we left from over there, we aren't the same people. We now have our own culture. So I think that it'd still be a rift. I'm not saying it's impossible. I think it'd still be a rift.
All right. I'm gonna poke at Diallo a little bit. What about the Christians who are rooted in liberation theology? Do you think those people, if you heard of it, do you think those people could get on board and kind of like the brother was saying, still be a part of the revolution or the change without losing their identity?
First, there's no such thing as liberation
Hey,
theology.
wait, not you. I was just poking. We could talk about it later, but.
Oh, I thought you was asking me, man. Well, don't play like that.
Go ahead, Latoya.
I'm sorry.
I think that it's possible that they could, but I think that the main work would try to be get them to talk to the other Christians. It would be their job to actually try to get them on board. I don't think that they'd be the problem. I think that the responsibility would mainly be on them to try to get the other Christians that are not as liberal on board. I think that would be something that they could help with.
Okay. Stafford, did you have something? Or anybody else? All right. Wait, somebody raise their hand. Laura, go ahead. You got 2 minutes.
Okay, when you say that we're all too divided, and are you basically saying that it would be not beneficial to try to spend the time to talk to these other groups, but instead to put that energy in towards us just coming, a smaller group coming together, because we would need allies. So where do you suppose we would get our allies from then, if we don't convince our own people to help?
I'm not saying that we'd be alone. I'm saying that we would be divided. We'd have allies, but I think there'd be more of the militant allies, more so the new black, the new black, whatever they're calling themselves these days, the Black Panthers, or more militant groups like that. I don't think it'd be more so the peaceful groups. The more peaceful groups are for everyone. They're not so white or black. They're people of color. They're for everyone. So, like I said, I think it'd be a little bit harder to get someone to say, okay, we're going for black power versus Black Lives Matter. It's a difference to people.
Okay.
Thank you. And that's real.
All right. If that's the end of the questions, we'll go to the next person. All right, so Miss Green, you can go. Miss Semietta's next, and then Chief, and then Adia.
Well, first I want to apologize to everyone. I am currently working, so if I have to jump off, take a call, I apologize. But the question that I was looking at answering was the first one. And that is, hold on, let me pull it up.
Individual Black success is success for the group, true or false?
Yes, that one. Well, first, I think it's important to define what success is. We know the white hegemony idea of success, which acquiring a bunch of fiat currency and some trinkets and you made it. But my idea of success is the liberation of the Black community. Until we achieve that, we are not successful. We are working towards success. And so I would say the answer to that question is false. There is no individual success without the success of the group. So the liberation of our community is where we get our success from. And so if success isn't working towards that, then it's not successful. If we're not working to create opportunities to acquire land and ultimately create sovereignty, then we're not working towards success. And so I don't feel that individual success is really a thing when it comes to liberating our community. And so false.
Okay.
I picked a quick question because, like I said, I'm working.
All right. Anybody have a clarifying question? I do have one. So would I guess, how do you respond to, let's say, LeBron James and Tiffany Haddish and Charlemagne the God and all these people who have these, I don't know, popularity, and critiquing them on a public scale, on a large scale? How do you respond to that as being like hating or counterproductive, especially knowing that people romanticize the spook behind a door? These people probably could be spooks or something. Like, how do you go about challenging or addressing those people without coming off as hating or whatever the words be?
Other people's opinion of me really doesn't really matter to me. So I'm going to speak my truth regardless of how people perceive it, whether they perceive me as a hater or not. I'm going to speak my truth. And like I said, if you claim to be a part of this community and you're not working towards liberating this community, then you need to be called out, especially if you're in a position to really, with resources to really assist with that. And so, I feel like also addressing them is not really productive right now. Like, I feel like, us having forums such as this where, we're not, and hopefully getting to the point where we're not just discussing, but we're actually coming up with plans to pull resources together and acquire what is needed to create sovereignty and liberation. So I feel like, it's really, at this point, it's really not even necessary to call them out. Really what we need to do is just come together based off of a common goal and working through with integrity and liberate our community. That's where I feel like our focus needs to be, not on calling people out.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Oh, Laura.
Okay. So since there is no success without the success of the group, what would you say to people who, let me rephrase that. If we're going to acquire land and basically build our own society for sovereignty, would you say that would also include working on getting our own government as well? Because right now we're in a system, where we are being governed by people who don't have our best interests at heart. So do you think it's better to just work on building our own or trying to revise the system that is here currently?
I think it's better that we work on our own. Like the sister was saying earlier, we're in a situation where we're constantly being re-traumatized. And so you really can't heal until you remove yourself from that traumatic experience. And so we need to get into a position to where we can heal, and that is separation. And so we have to be willing to let go of what the quote unquote ideas of luxury that this system offers and really connect with what's real and what's true to us, and do the healing work. And as far as government goes, we don't have to mimic our government after one that's clearly not even working, but having maybe councils where you have elder councils and sisters and brother councils, and you come together and create, a idea of order and structure, because you definitely need order, but I don't think it needs to be mimicked or based off of the system that is already not working for us.
Thank you.
All right. Any others? Thank you. So we'll go to Simonetta and then Chief, and then Adia close us out for the first portion, and we'll go right into that little heated part.
Okay, let me go to my question. Initially, I wanted to do number 2, but I think that was taken. So I
You can do
moved
it.
on to
You can
number
do it.
7.
Okay.
I don't know if number 7 was taken or not. I don't think I've heard anyone
Nope.
do number 7, so I'll do number 7. And I've been kind of having this question like ruminate in my mind. I don't have a specific answer, so I just have statements and thoughts, and hopefully based on your responses I can gain some clarity on what this is. But the question
Read the
is,
question.
yeah, the question is, are all skin folk kinfolk? Why or why not? When I read that, the first thing that came to my mind is this sounds sort of like tribal speech. And the reason why I'm coming from that perspective and why my response was that when I read this question is because I come from a country where we're all Black, but we demarcate ourselves by ethnicity, and that has a big weight on politics. It has a big weight on how the country essentially functions. I mean, this is a country where there are over 200 languages. And so coming to like Black consciousness in America is a very strange space to navigate, because there's this assumption that, okay, well, Black people here, well, everyone is kinfolk because, we're a minority here. So naturally we should be all on the same page. But even within the Black community, and I don't even know if there's a Black community, it just seems like they're just Black individuals. It seems like even within like the Black people here, they're different tribes, right? So I guess that's what that question would infer. Is the person who, even though they look like you, are they a part of your tribe? And when I talk about tribe, do they share your same like sort of philosophies about, socioeconomics or politics or culture? Do they have the same agenda as you? So if I'm looking at that question from the perspective of tribe, then no, not everyone, even if they look like you, will be of your tribe, will have the same philosophy as you do, or will be trying to achieve the same goals. There are some groups of Black people who are happy to just exist comfortably under white supremacy. As long as, they get their positions under white supremacy, they're okay. And they're actually going to be the biggest hurdles that we have to jump over for those who don't want to just live comfortably under white supremacy. So that's how I took that question, and I'm open to hearing your thoughts and your feedback about that.
Okay. Diallo. Come off mute though.
It seems like you were jumping around in your defining skin folk and then determining whether or not we were all skin folk or not, because you mentioned ideology and then tribal or ethnicity. But people within the exact identical tribal ethnicity in the exact same household, brothers and sisters, can have divergent ideology. So are you suggesting that in order for us to be kinfolk, we have to have not only the same tribe, ethnicity, be from the same region, and we all have to have the identical ideology to be kinfolk?
That's a good question. Again, the reason why I'm jumping all over is because I don't really know how to feel about that question myself. But that's a good point. I guess perhaps, I mean, just by virtue of being Black people, we are kinfolk. We are one people, but we don't all sort of navigate in the same frequency. Like some people, like I said, there are people who just want to be assimilationist, and then there are people who don't want to be assimilationist. So that's where you find like more distinctions starting to appear. So yeah, that's how I identify it.
Well, I just want to, I was born and raised in the Midwest of the United States, Missouri, and I've heard that all my life, been told all kinfolk and kinfolk, and it's generally in our, it is denoted that not really what you do in terms of achieving your goals or what you believe, but a skinfolk that isn't a kinfolk is a person who works deliberately against the interest of other Blacks, who serve white people or serve
Mhm.
white agenda like Candace Owens or Larry
Exactly. Yeah.
Elders. So that's
Right.
what that meant. So
Right.
in order, you can still be a kinfolk even if you want to achieve economically or you have divergent views or divergent
Got it.
ambitions, as long as you don't achieve your ambitions by attacking Black people as a group or trying to tear down other Black individuals. It's not really.
So yeah, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's how the term is generally applied
Okay.
in the West.
So then would that mean that people like, Larry Elder and Candace Owens, they're kinfolk, but they're not skinfolk? Or do I have it the other way around?
It's the other way around. Just because
It's
they
the other way.
Black, they ain't down with us. They're
Okay.
not kinfolk. They're skinfolk,
Oh.
but all skinfolk, or as Chuck D said, every brother ain't a brother, or every sister
Okay.
ain't a sister. So, but
Okay.
again, it's not that you have to be. If you want to be an entertainer, or you don't want to be engaged politically, whether you're a Black atheist or Black spiritualist, it's more focused on whether or not you take actions to undermine the interest or the will of your community and your people. Uncle Tom sellout, coon,
Mm-hmm.
those type of things. That's what it's meant. It's not as detailed as I think you tried to make, as you suspected that it was.
Yeah.
It's not that deep.
I was reaching, I know. Thank
Go ahead,
you.
Go ahead, Laura.
I was actually going to say I appreciated how deep she went with it, because seeing and do you mind, first question, where are you from? Second question, just going back to saying that I do appreciate how you went into it and looking at it as more so your tribe, because being from somewhere where we don't have, everyone being Black, all we can do is look at each other from our pigments. I like how you mentioned putting everyone together as far as the same agenda, pushing the same agenda. I think that's kind of a good way to look at it, as if they're for you. But my question would be then, how would you suggest we go about getting more of spreading our ideology with the masses in a more public way to get more people on our side?
Sure. Well, first, to answer your first question, I'm originally from Ghana. And even within Ghana, I mean, I'm Fanti. So that's a separate ethnic group from like Ashanti. And then we have so many different ethnic groups. But I'm Fanti from Ghana. And for me, when I think about how to like spread the messaging, I think it starts off by trying to reach out to people who are not so far on the other end, but people who are more intellectually flexible and they're sort of searching. I think those are the people that are a little bit easier to reach, because they're still at the like nascent stages of really coming to terms with identity, culture, or even their politics. People like Candace Owens and Larry Elder, I think they're too far gone. And so when I think about people like that, I immediately register in my mind, okay, they just belong to a different tribe. They belong to the tribe of the assimilationists. I don't even see a point of like, insulting them or doing any of this. I just think, okay, they make it clear what they want. They just want to assimilate. That's what it is. So let me focus my attention on people who are still sort of more willing to be flexible in their intellect than people who are on the other end.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question. So since there's like no ethnocentrism, there's no ruling identity in a way, is liberation even possible because everybody's everywhere? And if it is, what does it look like?
I mean, I don't know how to answer that question, because right now we're at this point where it's really a fight over trying to regain the minds and hearts of people, and trying to kind of put them on the same accord. Some people think they're already free. They're like, what? Like, so how do you tell people that you need to fight for liberation when they think they're free, when they think being assimilated means freedom? So it's a hard battle. I think a lot of it is first trying to get people to a state of consciousness where they understand that, this isn't freedom, first of all. And then you can start to work on the mind, the education component. That's the only way that I see this moving forward.
So you mean to tell me Black Wakanda is not a thing in Atlanta?
I haven't been to Atlanta yet, but I mean, I think it's aspirational, but I don't think we're there.
Damn, I thought I was about to move to Atlanta next week. All right, so that's your 15 seconds up. We go to Chief. We got 2 more. Chief, what question are you answering? And then when you start, we'll start.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is number 14. Do we have an affinity towards celebrities or highly educated Black people that white people have elevated for us? And I would have to say that yes and no. I don't think that the affinity is natural. I think that is something that is forced on us, that is in order, you know, how we've been talking all day about pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or look at this Black who is well behaved and they have achieved certain things. They were able to get out of the Black American ghetto. I don't think that we're born into this world just loving them. I just think having an affinity for celebrity or highly regarded Black people in the white space is definitely something that is forced on us. And I'll use an example of, you know, Barack Obama. We have an affinity towards him because he achieved, or he made it to the highest level in America, right? He went to the White House. So it's like, can you get further than that? I don't know, but he made it there. So now it's like he is, how can I say this? He achieved that proximity to whiteness, right? As close as he gets to whiteness without being white, even though he's half white. It's weird to explain it, but I think that we do. I know I'm all over the place because I'm sitting outside and it's so noisy, but I think that we do. I think that they use these people as figures to say, if you can be like them, then we'll like you. If you can be like them, then we'll stop mistreating you, because all you have to do is just do what we say like they have and it'll be fine. So we're always trying to be like Jay-Z or Beyonce because they made it, you know, to those spaces. But yeah.
You good? You got 40 seconds. You good?
I'm good.
Okay. Who has the first clarifying question? All right, bro, go ahead. I'll be after you.
All right, so my question would be, because like my question is more like questioning the question, but just want to hear the sister's opinion on it. Would be, so being that Black people are the most influential people in the world, you know what I'm saying? Do you think that we can change the pendulum swing when it comes down to the white people who actually choose like our celebrities or our, you know, our people that's like in the limelight, you know what I'm saying? Or do you think we can change the pendulum to make it that we really are choosing who's in the limelight? So it's not really about what the suits are saying. Do you feel like us as Black people can use our influence and start saying that we want that activist to be looked at like the rapper, you know what I'm saying? Or we want the, you know what I'm saying, the person who's feeding the homeless in our city to be looked at as like the next football player, so that our youth can start looking towards that. Do you feel like that's possible for us as a people to start our own choices?
I definitely think anything is possible in this life. Of course, it'll take time to get things, but I don't think that I want that. I don't want anybody to be idolized. I don't want any activists or any leaders to be put on a pedestal or be idolized or have like a celebrity status where we cannot think, you know, as a collective and have debate. That's one of the things, like I use Obama as an example.
it's so difficult for us as a collective to really criticize him and say the things that he's done to harm our community and other communities, right? Because, you know, we have that high regard or have that affinity for him. So I don't want our children to look at the activists like, you know, this God figure or this idol. I would prefer that we treat each other like people, right? Like not somebody on this pedestal. You know, we have our different roles to play. If this person is leading a movement, they still should be regarded as, you know, our equals, you know, nobody higher. So to finish answer your question, I think that if we wanted to change the pendulum, we possibly could, but I don't want us to have, you know, Black versions of this white nonsense. I don't really care for that. If that makes sense to you.
Understood. All right. So when I say put him in the limelight, though, I'm talking about just like in a sense of something to look up to. You know what I'm saying? Because like our youth really looks up to rappers and, you know, football players. So that's what I meant by putting him in like somebody to look up to. Because at a certain point, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King was our Young Thug and our Lil Boosie. You feel me? So that's what I meant by that.
I think that if like I said, if we want the children to learn about Malcolm X, then we could teach them about that. I mean, I think in some places that we give too much power to white people. Like, we shouldn't have to wait for a school system or a white person to make a Malcolm X a celebrity. Not that I want that, but what I'm trying to answer your question is, if that's what we want, we could do that, because honestly, we made Young Thug and Boosie the celebrities, right? Because Black people can't achieve a certain status in this life without the support of other Black people. I know they think that they can, but if we don't support them or back them, they won't get further, even though white people can select them and say, this is it. We support them. We support Boosie. We support Young Thug. So if we are ingraining in our children that, you know, Malcolm X was a good leader because of these things, then they will, you know, follow him or follow his, you know, his words, his teachings, as opposed to a Boosie or a Young Thug or whoever white people might select for us.
So question, so a lot of times there's this concept of, you know, celebrating dead leaders, right? And there are people, like I can probably, you give me a state right now and I could probably name somebody that I will hold in high regard. So my question is, do you know a personal leader that we should kind of push up, right? It could be local or whatever. And then why, like what makes them qualified to kind of be in that leadership role?
Do I know someone locally? Yes. I live in Detroit, Michigan, and one of my favorite people is a person who ran a school and he runs a farm now.
Baba Malik?
His name is,
Baba Malik?
Yes. You know him?
Of course I know Baba Malik. Let's go.
So, you know, when people get defeated or if they feel like they can't, you know how people feel like, you know, I don't know people's tolerance in this group, but you know, people say like, I can't stand ignorant niggas, or, you know, I'm exhausted. Niggas don't want to do shit. You know, I use him as an example of other people. Like, you know, he ran a school, and when they took the charter away, that didn't stop him. You know, he went to the next thing, and he never blamed Black people. He never, you know, disrespected people. He just kept going, you know, and people in the neighborhood kept breaking into the farm and stealing machinery, and he just kept raising money and replacing it, but he never stopped. He never threw in a towel. And he's like in his 60s. So he's what, you know, American society would consider old, even though I would say young. But for somebody to keep going and not letting that stop him, you know, that was who I would call a leader. And at the same time, we don't have to idolize Malik. We could just shine light on the work that he's done with other people and just use an example of how you keep going or how you lead without disparaging your people. I mean, like, to come from education and then go to like agriculture, to me that's dope. Because, you know, living in America, you could be focused on one discipline, and we often forget that addressing our problems, we have to, you know, use multiple disciplines, and we have examples of that. So I would use him as an example.
Okay, love it. Any other clarifying questions before we move to the last person? Good. Thank you, sis.
Thank you.
All right, Adia, go ahead with your number question and then start answering.
Hi, everybody. I chose number 3. And the question is it dangerous or wrong to criticize Black public figures? And my thoughts are this, is that it's more dangerous not to criticize public figures, mainly because they're public figures. If you self-proclaim or identify as a public figure, you're putting yourself in the public to be criticized. So it only makes more sense that you are given that platform to do that. You're a public entity, if you will. I also added that I'd like to say that it might be a risk. You know, there's going to be risk for criticizing public figures, being for obvious reasons that depending on the amount of influence you've attained, and the amount of power, if you will. And I also said that if we're speaking about criticism for criticism's sake alone, I like to say that criticism is a result of it all. So no, I don't think it's wrong to, and I don't think it's dangerous either. I think it's more dangerous not to. So yeah.
Got a minute and 40 if you need to add anything else before your questions. I'll go to the questions. Okay. Anybody got a clarifying question? I have one that I was actually going to give to Chief, but I can give it to you. So what happens when you have a celebrity, or what you call those icons, like Beyonce, and she starts to show these signs of talking about Oshun and doing this and doing that, and then people are like, she's waking up, whatever the case. How do you feel about, although she's the leader and she's now mentioning these, wait, I'm sorry. Somebody said, who was it? I don't remember. Y'all probably remember. He said, Black America will be progress or make it when a celebrity call out an African god. I can't remember who said it. But
that was John Henrik Clarke.
John Henrik Clarke. So if Beyonce did something similar, how do you feel about people criticizing her? Let's say if she was actually starting to wake up and be able to actually make some changes, how would you gauge when to criticize or when not, when to keep pushing? Or I don't know if that question makes sense, but like, we want her to wake up and do the right thing. So when she start doing it, maybe when do you not criticize or do criticize or things like that?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's important to, for example, just call it out, to, you know, directly confront the elephant in the room, if you will. And depending on, you know, how it's responded to that question or that direct interaction, then you can go from there. Because you ultimately, you can't really hold somebody, you know, to their past, if you will, if, you know, if their contributions are being changed for the better, if you will.
Okay, go ahead. Diallo, you got something too? We go at the iPhone and Diallo.
Oh, go ahead, Roger. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, Beyonce is using our struggle as props to in white venues, like the NFL, like literally like the NFL let Beyonce perform because they were having a flurry of sexual assault allegations of many black women that they allowed their players to assault and buried under the rug, and she gave them that brand marketing. It's just, I don't understand how we identify celebrities as leaders when they're literally products manufactured and sold to us, you know.
Exactly, and that's also something that I wanted to clarify too, because you spoke specifically, the question specifically spoke public figure. You know, it didn't say leader. Now, I wouldn't attribute Beyonce as a leader, specifically of, you know, the Black liberation movement. No.
Go ahead, bro. You had one.
Yeah, I was just wanted to chime in on basically when you say that we can't hold them accountable for things when their new contributions is like, you know, so grand that it kind of like overwashes all the bad shit they did. So like so basically you're saying that we can't hold anything against these people, even if, you feel me, it was like what they were doing was so what's the word I'm looking for? It was feeding perpetuating our ignorance, you get what I'm saying? So since they're on a new path now, we just gonna wash away all the fuckery and everything else that was done beforehand, you feel me? It's like, do you really truly think that that's the way that we should be carrying things when it comes down to these people?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I do think that what's the best way to put it? Eye for eye. I mean, you have to look at the history, if you will. What do you what seems reasonable? And in this case, I think just for the example of using Beyonce alone, resources, wealth that she's attained, I think that's warranted, and that there the way that it's allocated, that's going to be dependent upon, you know, the recipient.
Okay.
Indeed. I agree.
All right. So appreciate you. So what's going to happen is this: we don't have a lot of time left, but what I want to do is I want to have Diallo say something really quick about the boot camp of leaders in liberation movement, like reiterate what he said, and then I want everybody to chime in on how they feel about, you know, initiating and putting these people through these like really tough obstacles, opposed to just like, wait, you said Black Lives Matter? Oh, they our leader now. Instead of doing that, respond to what Diallo says after he finished reiterating what he said about that.
Well, I first of all, I think that leaders shouldn't be self-appointed. They should not be able to define themselves as leaders or even define their tenure as leaders. Leaders have to be selected from the people. I think before we get leaders, we need to secure agendas, define what agendas are, whether that agenda is local, regional, national, or global. And once the agenda is defined, then we put the leaders in place. Oftentimes the leaders come to us with agendas, or we ask our leaders what the agenda is. I think we need professionals, researchers, even artists and philosophers to construct viable agendas to then market, educate, disseminate that agenda to the collective, and then, and only then, when there is a defined objectives, defined methodology, defined principles, and the resources required to advance that agenda, then we put the leader in place. And then that leader must have ongoing scrutiny about whether or not they are advancing us towards that agenda, whether we are stagnant or whether we are regressing further away from that agenda. And the leader has to account for whether it's the state of the community, state of the organization, state of the global African or Pan-African collective. I said that being a Black leader should be the hardest job to secure and the easiest job to lose. I think there is a lot of confusion about what a leader is, what the role a leader should play, and how long it is a leader, any individual leader is valuable. Ultimately, African people, our agenda is our leader. No person is the leader. A person is a placeholder, is a bureaucrat. I think we need to study more bureaucracy and less of this emotional and attachment to leaders. The objective and the goal is what leads us, what guides us, what dictates to us what we can and can do, or what we should and shouldn't do, what we should or shouldn't allow others to do in relationship to us internally and externally. Once we define what our objective is, liberation, Pan-Africanism, African liberation, there's a lot of agendas on the table, but once a group decides what that is, that's the leader. And the people who hold the leadership position or the bureaucratic title or position of guiding us towards that goal, they should be disposable, interchangeable, and their level of loyalty and love that we show them is directly proportional to the success that they bring to us, how far they advance us along that agenda.
Love it. Love it. So, Ms. Jones, I want you to respond to that, then Asafo, and then we'll spin around about do you agree with it? Do you push back? How you feel?
I may have, I think mine might be a little bit different. I don't necessarily consider myself a leader, but I do believe that if I am not able to fight for myself, it's going to make it very difficult to fight for other people. So when it comes to my own oppression and within systems that I'm involved in, if I don't call that out, and if I don't know how to do that, then I'm not going to even really know how to maybe be involved in choosing leadership. So I think it is some individual responsibility for people to be involved in their own kind of liberation, if you will. Maybe everybody don't know how to do that. I think, I guess I get caught, I don't know why we have to have these, I don't even know what leader, like I couldn't say right now what leader I identify with in the Black community or in the United States overall. So I'm a little different. I just try to help everybody recognize their worth, and hopefully with that, it becomes a collective, and then if everybody's doing everything for themselves first, and then they work together, then I feel like things will come together. But I don't think it's helpful to oftentimes find somebody to do something for you or on your behalf if you are not willing to do it for yourself.
Okay. So
can I respond to that?
Yeah, it's real quick, and then I want Asafo to.
All right, then I'll
because I actually want to go back to what you said about, and I love the fact that you said the leader should be the agenda, and these people are just like, you know what I mean. But Asafo, go respond.
There's an entire, and see, that's why we can't call ourselves woke or conscious without having any political literacy. Okay, so if you look at, I study conservatism. I've studied it for many years. There is an entire apparatus in place from cradle to grave to mold and shape and push forward the conservative movement and the conservative leadership, okay? All of that is in place, whether you're talking about the schools, the think tanks, the internecine networks, familial networks, whether you're talking about colleges like Liberty University, they are all apologetically in line with, we are building leaders of this conservative movement, this conservative revolution that we are pushing forward into perpetuity. So we're really going to have to kind of get out of this. We're going to have to get out of this mindset that, that's all I have to say. I have more to say, but in response to what the sister just said, but what I would also add, I agree 100% with what Brother Diallo said. I would add that, our leadership, the agenda must also be an agenda that is completely unaccepting of mythology, right? Completely unaccepting of comfortable ideas and standards that really don't hold up under scrutiny. Someone earlier made a comment about how the Koreans have their own little enclave and they take care of themselves and they have their own school and what have you. But that, you know, even though these Asians, you know, that's again, understanding political literacy. That's the model minority myth that was propagated by conservatives to hold against black people. Because they say, okay, well, you know, these Asians come in here and do so well. What's wrong with you people? Number one, it's not true. Asians aren't doing well. There's extreme poverty in these all Asian enclaves, okay? I wrote about it before. And secondly, you know, we just need to do away with that model minority myth because it's not true. So I would just put my emphasis on that, you know, just being able to, having an agenda, having a leadership that is being molded and shaped to even be able to kind of penetrate and dispel the fog that's put in front of our faces by this mythology.
Okay. So plug back in Diallo, and then after Diallo, everybody chime in on that concept, that thought process. We go to you after Diallo.
Well, we also can't confuse concepts. I think a lot of times we personalize collective struggle, and that is another point of lack of political education or political maturity. And this myth that we have to have everything together in order to make collective progress or build. We have to construct institution, and there's no such thing as personal liberation. Systemic problems require systemic solutions. Collective problems require collective solutions. There is no personal freedom. There is no personal truths. So if you are working through issues, if you construct a Pan-African organization, as I organize here in Chicago, I know that I'm going to have people who have issues with everything from housing security to issues with violence and being able just to maneuver in their own communities because the way the game territories are set up here. So as we set up organizations to have our people contribute to what I call to make a positive attribution to the just aspirations of our collective, we have to, embedded within our organizations, have food relief, housing assistance, peer counseling embedded within our collective organization so that people can have their immediate crisis addressed, personal crisis addressed, longer term issues. My wife, every time we organize, we come together, she works with young people trying to get them into technical skills, get them into formal schooling, education. So a revolutionary organization is holistic and collective. And if we ever try to say, well, we're going to work on these isolated issues, abuse, and want to get into the just deal with violence or want to deal with trauma, we will never ever get liberated. We don't need to be perfect to have freedom, power, and control our own territory. Just ask Trump and all the white leaders. Going back to George Washington, who was raping children, and you know, he's some nutcases. So what we need, all we need initially, is the will to be free, and after that, really that will help us to define everything else. And I also like to second what Adolfo said. You know, I don't work with any organization. People always say, because I talk so bad about religion, they say, what'd you follow Brother Malcolm? And I say all the time, I would have never followed Malcolm under the Nation, but I would have followed and worked with Malcolm under the OAAU, because he said this is a explicitly secular organization, even though he still was a Muslim, El Hajj and all that. So I'm willing to work with people with these ideas, but when it comes to the work of the people, it has to be scientific. It has to be evidence-based. It has to be verifiable, traceable, and falsifiable in order to be viable. I'm sorry for rhyming there, but I am in Chicago, up the street from Jesse Jackson's headquarters, so I just can't help it.
All right, iPhone, brother. Everybody else, get ready to give your final chime-ins and we close up.
You be catching me with the iPhone, bro. But
I'll be just looking at the names and I just be calling.
I got you. But I just wanted to backpedal a little bit what Brother Diallo was saying for real when it comes down to leadership, because I do agree that as the people, we have to choose the leader, but at the same time, I'm more on the favor of that it has to be like universe ordained or self ordained. You know what I'm saying? Only because of the fact that in these times right now, everybody's waiting for that person. You know what I'm saying? To be like, yo, everybody, we want to choose him. You know what I'm saying? But it hasn't been a situation when it's been that. You know what I'm saying? And just looking at like when I go to these protests or when I go to these community meetings, you know what I'm saying? It's always that TikTok moment of, so who's going to do this? You know what I'm saying? So when it comes down to a situation like that, I feel like the community as a whole, we're kind of still on that boat right now. Because even when it comes down to our past leaders, such as like Marcus Garvey or like, you know, to go back to Malcolm X again, you know what I'm saying? At some point, even before the people was riding with them, they had to take it upon themselves to say, you know what? I'm going to be the one who do this. I'm going to be the one who take the sacrifice, because it's a big sacrifice. In today's time, people don't really want to take it or be chosen for it. You know what I'm saying? So the person who is willing to put that weight on their back, you know what I'm saying? I feel like that's the person that is literally supposed to be in leadership when it comes down to our people. Because as long as we keep on waiting for us to choose when we don't even have a collective thought, yet as a people, we don't have that perfect collective thought, we can't going to choose leadership. We're going to have to wait for somebody to, like I said, step up, and then they bring a game plan such as what we can do in our communities, starting off with how can we heal our communities and meet the needs of the people. You know what I'm saying? Somebody has to step up to the plate and do that. Yeah, and as long as we feel like that we have to choose, it may take longer than what we want. You know what I'm saying? And since this is my last piece sharing, I just want to say peace to everybody, peace and light. You feel me? Much love to the brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? Peace.
All right, what's up, bro? Well, first of all, Dale Jones said, you know, these men didn't choose themselves, and then these men didn't make themselves. The times created the self. And Kwame Ture was very critical of this concept of the great man theory of history. A great man comes along and does this, where we have to start understanding, looking at Malcolm in the context of the milieu or the political ecosystem. Same thing with Garvey, because Garvey was in Jamaica doing the same work, advocating for the same actions, and he got no smoke. He got no support. And here's the thing we have to understand about leadership. I ask Black people this all the time. Who's the leader of capitalism? Who is the leader of America? So when you think of America, you don't think about Trump, because you know Trump will be out in a few months or in 4 years. But America has survived many tumultuous change. America is led by really its charter is not the U.S. Constitution, but let's just not get too deep. America is led by the Constitution. Who is the leader of Christianity? So you have a lot of subsects of Christianities with all kind of leaders. So when you think about leadership, don't think about leader of all Black people. You have to scale this. You know, some days I wake up and I go into the same organization, and some days I'm a leader and some days I am a grunt. You know, when we're working our gardens and doing our other activities. So the leadership role is fluid. But what, again, really leads us is our objectives, our agenda. You know, and the methodology, or as Kwame Ture says, we can change, tactics change all the time. You know, you don't compromise your principles, and you don't wane from your goal, but tactics, methodology, titles, who does what on what day and how, that's all interchangeable. And there's no leader that has not been created by the people. And you take Garvey out of Harlem, New York, and put him in Jamaica, he couldn't do a damn thing in Jamaica. No disrespect to the Marcus Garvey. And then when he got exiled, he landed in Europe and couldn't do shit. He needed this environment. So Garvey was a leader, but it was the people that made Garvey the leader. Same thing with Malcolm. The same thing with every leader we respect and leaders that aren't worthy of our respect. It is the people who create and sustain leaders, but the people often surrender or abdicate their power and responsibilities into propping up, sustaining, or removing leadership.
All right, anybody else got to chime in before we close out? Laura and Ivan and whoever else.
All right, I'd like to say that I believe that One, I agree, and I'm so sorry. I'm gonna call you iPhone. I wish I did. Well, I'll get your name at the end. Put your name in the chat, and I'll call you by your name. But what he said as far as leaders, we can't wait. We can't sit around and wait to choose one person. I think that we do need to co-sign, but if we like just sit around and try to have like a little pageant or an election right now for a leader, it is going to take all day. I feel like there are people out there right now who are already stepping up in those leadership positions. It's the people who are organizing. It's the people who are getting up and talking. Now, the problem I think stems from that they don't have the national media that the celebrities have. And that just goes back to show, the media, we know who controls it. It's not us. So they're not going to push our agendas. They're going to do the exact opposite. So if we're looking to the media for our leader to appear, then we're going to be led to the slaughter. We have to figure out how, it was said earlier, and I just wanted to bring it back up about the whole either getting offline or just more so getting off of maybe just Google. But we need to have our own outside channels. We need to be able to organize in a sense that is in person and bring life back to reality, because this reality that we live in is the only thing that is real, even though it's, I hate using that word for what we see, because we can barely see anything with our actual eyes or even any of our senses. We can't really perceive what's going on around here fully. So I do think that we need to get more in touch with the roots, with the streets, with who's doing what, reaching out to each other, because people are already coming together. I think that all of these, we have a lot of splinter groups. We are very divided. I think if we could get these groups to all come together, because they all are having a lot of the same agendas. They're just the method of how they're executing them is just very different. So I think if we could get everyone together, then we could kind of be on the same accord. Now, as far as the hazing goes, I think that needs to stop. I do not think that it needs to be, being a Black person in leadership should be the hardest job in America or in the world or whatever, because I think that just discourages Black leaders from wanting to rise up. The whole problem that we're facing right now is that you get a Black person in power, and then the moment they get in the spotlight, everybody's always looking at how they can tear them down, picking out all of their flaws.
Question before we move to the next person. Don't you think it's a little bit oxymoronic to say gonna discourage a leader? That's kind of like tough. If you really think, like, what leader actually can get discouraged?
I feel you. I feel you.
Actual leader.
I feel you on that. And I appreciate you saying that. And I think that's kind of why, like, when the leaders who are showing their leadership abilities and are actually out there doing things, the ones, they're going to come up, they're going to rise up, because people are going to want to follow them, because they're going to have that magnetic personality that and that determination that is undeniable. So I think they're just naturally going to float up to that position. And when they do come up, I don't think we need to be necessarily trying to tear them down. We should support, we should help guide them. Yes. I think we need to be more vocal with our opinions and how we want to basically the direction that we want things to go in, because a good leader listens to their people. That's the other sign. If they're a real leader, they're going to listen to their people, and they're going to be okay with being in the spotlight, because it's not easy being in the spotlight. Not everybody's equipped to do it. Not everybody can handle the pressures of being in the spotlight. So if we appoint someone and they're not ready for it, they're going to crumble. And I think that's what's going on right now. We have a lot of Black people who have been lifted up because they are weak-willed, and they're good at being mouthpieces. That's why you have a lot of actors, and I hate to say this because I'm an actress. I mean, I think and just by saying that, I see that they like to put actors and people who are, in the public eye on stages, because they're not afraid of repeating what someone tells them to say. So I do think that in closing, the leaders will appear. They will self-identify themselves, and we just have to have the discernment to see that this is someone that we need to back, and that this is someone that not only just blindly back, but we need to be able to let them know, hey, this is our agenda. This is where we want to steer things. Be our voice, because you can speak loudest. And
a leader is not a mouthpiece, because you got Brother Asafo who just described that our oppressors cultivate their leaders and create institutions for vetting, indoctrinating, and equipping their leaders. And then the brother said our leaders have to be universally ordained. And then Sister Laura, you say that they will arise like bread. I mean, listen, this is not about this. Our leaders' responsibility is not to make us feel good about ourselves, not to even make us believe we can achieve. The leader's job is to execute the will and the agenda in the interest of the people who follow. And there will be dozens of leaders. The systems and institutions of global white domination literally have thousands of leaders, and every leader has specific roles, and they don't arise. And it kind of frightens me when Black people sit here and use criteria for the people who will lead us to liberation and stop the genocide that they wouldn't accept if they're dentists. Like, how did you become a dentist? I was inspired to. I arose to be a dentist, or universally ordained to be your dentist or your mechanic. You know, no, I know, and to talk about, oh, it shouldn't be hard. You want a physician who's going to be working on your relative or loved one to have had to, you know, sit there and go over these books, this anatomy, this physiology, and have to dissect cadavers and go through a fellowship and internship. You want them to go through the ringer before they put a scalpel to your back or your chest. So I think that we don't take our liberation struggle very seriously. And I know, and I think we need to take a more, and I hate to use, for lack of a better term, a more professional approach. We have to build systems and institutions. We are up against an omnicidal, not just genocidal, but omnicidal, a machine of destruction. And these terms and these ideas that we have floating around are inadequate at best to get us where we're going. And it ain't something we can rush. We don't have a lot of time, but if it takes a minute I'd rather take a long time to find an effective leader than to secure a charismatic, well-spoken leader in a short amount of time that doesn't get shit accomplished over decades.
We're gonna have to close it there because there's another meeting on this thing. But I want to say real quick, thank you all so much for coming. Obviously the video's gonna be here for the rewatch. If you are courageous enough and you have some insight, please join us on Thursday for that discussion. Again, it started by, I'm going in these spaces, and there's a lot of men who literally will justify their ass off that a woman can somehow encourage people to rape her. And so we're going to have a dialogue around that. Again, it's going to be probably a triggering dialogue for some people and tough for some people. But if you want to join, let me know. We do have a book club for Black men. We're probably going to change it into a think tank, but the book club, we meet every Monday right now. I think that's going to be changing. If you want to join that, holler at me. We can get that going. And I think that's it. So again, I appreciate y'all for coming through. Diallo, you got 100% concur. But I love the concept of agenda, right? And I think those are beautiful questions. When you ask her, who's the leader of white hegemony? You're not gonna say George Washington. You're not gonna say Hitler, or I don't even know what you're gonna say. There's no way to say them. So I love that. And again, I appreciate y'all. See y'all next time.
Y'all take care.
Thank you.